Carnivore will shorten your life, question mark.
All right, yesterday I posted a video about a guy named Stefansson. This is from 1957, and this was him talking about his time he spent living among the what were called Eskimo at the time, or the Inuit.
Volnir Stefansson had frequent constipation. He was an Arctic explorer. I think his name was Volnir He has a weird first name. But yeah, this Arctic explorer whose last name was Stefansson, he was eating this retarded diet of like just meat because when he was exploring the Arctic, he was only eating meat there, and he got this stupid idea that eating meat is like only meat is a good idea for you. He had frequent constipation, and he had to regularly shoot oil up his ass to get his shits out. And they also did oral glucose tolerance tests on him, and it showed that he had diabetes. So, yeah, the guy was diabetic and couldn't take a shit, but apparently he's the... yeah, that's the evidence the carnivore dieters have to show, see, eating meat's good for you. This jackass who lived in the 1940s, who explored the Arctic, who couldn't take a shit and was diabetic, he proves eating meat is good for you.
Back around the early 1900s, and he basically stated that, in his belief, what he observed was meat plus fat was all that was necessary for a perfectly balanced diet. They're healthy, and he was healthy when he did that. Now, this prompted a comment.
Yeah, he was healthy when he did that. That's why he was diabetic.
That said that, hey, look, he didn't live very long, neither did Vince Caranda. I don't know, but the Inuits didn't live long. We're the old people that do a meat-based diet. And so a couple, this sort of...
So 82, I wouldn't say somebody was eating a bad diet just because they lived 82. 82 is old, but that guy was eating a terrible diet. You can see the guy. He has the weirdest name. That's probably not him. Stefansson, Arctic Explorer. Yeah, this was the guy. He did a video. This is from 1957. So yeah. This is what he looked like. So, he'll make fun of Dr. Michael Greger for, being bald and having, like, dots on his head, saying, Michael Greger looks old for his age. He's clearly in bed. This guy has, like, a fucking growth on his forehead. Literally looks like he's held together by fucking bubble gum. And then he's like, look how healthy he is.
Response to that. So Stefansson died at age 82. Now, he was born in 1879. If you look at life expectancy tables for somebody born in 1879, they would have, on average, lived into their 40s, right? So he well exceeded that, but, a lot of it has to do with infant mortality. But, even though the fact that he made it, if you lived to 40, they were expected to live, to about 70 at that point. He exceeded that as well. And so the other thing is, he did not do a carnivore diet his whole life. He did that.
Like, by the way, this was a wealthy guy. So, yeah, chances are the reason why he lived longer than average is just because he was wealthy.
While he lived in Canada for about a dozen years, and then he came back to a more normal diet. He eventually got, he developed arthritis in his knee and other maladies. He went back to a carnivore diet later in his life for a period of time, it's believed. But again, he lived 82, which is well beyond his life expectancy.
So he didn't even follow this diet lifelong.
Based on when he was born. Now, the same thing with Vince Caranda. Vince Caranda was born in 1917. He again, well exceeded his life expectancy by making it to age 80. Now, in general, the question around the Inuit, did they have a shortened life? Well, if you look at modern Inuit, they do have a life expectancy that's shorter compared to, say, the rest of the Canadians, for instance. But that has, that really doesn't have a lot to do with, what their native diet was. When they were first,
They've always had a shorter life expectancy than Americans at the time. You can, if you went back 100 years, they would have about a 10 to 20 year lower life expectancy.
contacted back in the early 1800s, here's a data from a Russian survey expedition where they looked at the death rates among these people, and what you saw was that there were Inuit making it into their 80s and even 90s in this table here.
Dude, this is just so retarded. You see a massive fucking death rate around 25 to 45 and 45 to 55. So most people are dying by the time they reach their 40s or 50s. And then you see fewer and fewer people, dying at around this age because there's just not as many people living to that age. But how do you know these people are 70 or 80 or 90 or 100? They don't have birth certificates. They're nomadic. They live in fucking igloos. They don't have birth certificates. Most of them are dying by the time they reach 40 or 50. So anybody that they grew up with are dead. Like, 2 generations of people might have been fucking born by the time they'd reach 90 or 100, presumably. So how are they going to know their age? You can ask most people that are in their 80s or 90s. They don't know their fucking age. Like, why would you trust this data from the 1800s on nomadic fucking people who are tribes people whose average life expectancy was probably around 40, if that? Like this is just tarded.
Now, many of them died younger. Again, this is remember, they live in one of the most inhospitable places on the planet. Violence is very common, falling through the ice. And of course, the risk of infectious disease, which is always there, which always kills a lot of people. And their overall average life expectancy was something like 43 at the time back in the 1830s. Now, you compare that to, say, Great Britain, approximately the same time frame, and that life expectancy was around 41. So they actually were living just...
Where is he getting the data for that? So he's lying again. So this is just death rates in an age group over a period of time. This has nothing to do with average life expectancy. This is just death rate in the population stratified by age. So where is he getting that 40 figure? Like, he's just making this up. He's just entirely making this up. And the idea that this is more reliable than mortality data from England from the time. Again, these people didn't have birth certificates. They were nomadic. How are you going to know if any of these people are 80 or 90? They could be 50 or 60 and not know it.
As anyone else in the world, and also living in one of the most dangerous, like I said, inhospitable places on the planet. Now, the modern Inuit, again, and one of the things that most people don't know is one of the things that contributes to their relatively shortened life expectancy of around 70.
What's hilarious is we have things like the Nurses' Health Study, and there's another Harvard study that came out recently that, again, the whole carnivore community coped over, showing red meat was massively linked with diabetes. If red meat was so good for you, why is it in every single prospective cohort that comes out, you see this big link between red meat and early mortality?
Hand in your guns,
Donation, Justin. So this guy's trying to say, oh, red meat is so good for you. Why can't he show any prospective cohorts showing the more red meat you eat, the longer you live? But instead, he has to dig up some fucking article he found in some random blog post about fucking Russian explorers who met Inuit in the 1800s and make assumptions about their fucking average life expectancy. This guy is just fucking crackpot.
today, they smoke a lot, and not just a little. They smoke as more than just about any other population on the entire planet. Some estimates put their smoking rates at 70%, and you usually start smoking at about 8 years of age. And so I think most people would concede that, a lifetime of smoking beginning at age 8 for the vast majority of the population would have an impact on life expectancy, clearly, correct? The other thing to note is that, with the introduction of modern foods, now there's some theories that, there's this sort of insulin resistance trait that has developed as a protective mechanism. That is to say, if you go long periods of time, say you're doing long sea voyages, that's why some of the Pacific Islanders are thought to have the same sort of situation, or long land excursions across frozen wastelands, you are not going to be exposed to a lot of carbohydrates. So what you have to do, your body sort of has this sort of physiological insulin resistance so it can drive any glucose that is produced into the brain, into the adrenal glands, the testicles, the kidney, the red blood cells that are sort of absolutely dependent.
Dude, like, how is this a good thing? Now he's trying to argue that insulin resistance is a good thing?
On glucose. And so by shunning that away from the muscles, i.e. insulin resistance, the muscles can run on fat, more or less, than the glucose is spared for these situations. So that is considered an adaptive trait in many situations. And these Inuit, who many would argue originated in Siberia and then migrated, that was the reason for that. So when they're exposed to higher carbohydrate diets, like we see with the Native Americans, the Pacific Islanders, Inuit, things like that, they end up with really, really bad metabolic disease. So anyway, interesting. The other thing I'll say is, I don't know, who knows who's going to live the longest on it.
Yeah, so carbohydrates do not cause diabetes. It's high-fat diets that cause diabetes.
Any diet. I don't think we have any data that would point us one way or the other. What I will say is staying in shape, being fit, not being fat, not smoking, not drinking excessively, exercising, being strong are things that are likely to drive longevity. Certainly it'll help with health span. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, probably will help with longevity. Hopefully, perhaps so. That's the bet I'm taking, I guess. But again, I don't dwell on that. I dwell in the here and now. For all you know, you're going to get hit by a bus tomorrow. So,
like, I don't know what else he needs. Again, how many prospective cohorts have we seen where people who eat more meat die earlier, have higher rates of chronic disease, and then he thinks eating nothing but meat is a good idea? And his only evidence is that fucking Arctic explorer, this guy. Oh, well, he only ate meat. Look how healthy he was. It's fucking ridiculous. Why did I get